So we'll start quickly for 5 minutes and we'll discuss about the code of conduct. So hello everyone, my name is Praful. I am a Fabric super user and I am also the admin or the leader of this group. Okay, so as part of this user group, we have to maintain some community guidelines. So that is what I'll cover it in 5 minutes and then we can continue on the session part of it. So as part of the code of conduct, what Microsoft expects us is to follow the certain principles. So these are certain specific principles that we have to follow for every session and for every Fabric user group. Okay, we have to be friendly and welcoming to everyone. Okay, this space is created for everyone from very beginner to very experts. Okay, so all your ideas are welcome. Everything that you want to discuss or you want to kind of share with us, that is welcomed here. Please be patient with others. Okay, everybody has a different pace. There are language barriers. Of course, English is not our first language, so the other languages are also okay. I'll try to understand your question as much as possible. Be thoughtful of how people are interpreting your questions and queries. So please try to bring clarity. Be respectful and be inclusive and be open and curious. Okay, so I'll not spend much time on these slides. I have already uploaded these slides to our Fabric user group. You can go through them.
You
Okay.
hear immediately.
Yeah, and these are the, I would say, the not acceptable behavior. So I'll just share this
Uncle,
for a minute and then I
mother
can
काम कर रहा हूँ.
move to the next part of it, which is our presentation. Okay, so post this, I'll go to the actual presentation for today. Okay, okay. Yep. So today's presentation is all about building the enterprise grade semantic model. So there was a module in DP600 which was related to this only, and within this module there were multiple sections. So my plan is to cover them today. So let's start with that. So when you talk about building an enterprise grade semantic model, so there are multiple aspects that comes into the picture. Okay, so though DP600 covers them, but I would like to talk about it, and if you want to see something, I can kind of show a couple of demos also on top of it. So when we say enterprise ready grade semantic model, what do we mean by that? So when we say enterprise grade ready semantic model, a model which can kind of cater to the enterprise. So usually when we started Power BI in 2017-18, people used to build the reports, right? Reports was the core area. But come to 2026, the semantic model is the core area now. Okay, it is that core brain, the core unit, the core knowledge base, which is kind of powering not only your report, but it can power other things also inside your Microsoft Fabric. So the semantic model that you build nowadays, they are used for creating ontology, they are used for creating Fabric data agent, and sometimes they can also be consumed in your Excel file for your analysis purpose. There are more things coming in. You can also consume your semantic model inside Fabric notebooks also. Okay, so these are certain examples, but yeah, there are more things which are kind of coming in. So mostly semantic model now kind of forms the core of BI reporting as well as the governance part of it. So anyone who is interested should know how to build a well placed semantic model. Okay, so the first question that comes when you are trying to build a semantic model is how do we design it? So that is the first part that we need to understand. Once you understand how you're going to design it, post that what are the calculations that you're going to go create inside it, post that how well you have written those calculations, how do you optimize it, how do you make sure everything is within the limits. And the next part is the security part of it. How do you handle the security inside your model? Okay, and then life cycle, how do you maintain your semantic model over the span of your project development? So these are the different topics that we will try to cover as part of today's session. Okay, so anyone has any questions so far? Okay, no issues. So yeah, the first thing that we'll try to cover is design semantic model for scale. So when it comes to, I would say, creating the reports or any Power BI report that you are talking about, the first decision that an architect or a management would like to take is how are they going to design it. So since we work with enterprise-based organizations which have 10 years of data, 12 years of data, sometimes 20 years of data, their data is spread across multiple source systems, and then they want to build the report on top of it, right? So usually in this case, we have to pick the right storage mode that we will use as part of building our semantic model. Okay, so when you talk about building a report, okay, so your semantic model has to power it, right? So for example, if I have, let's say, an SAP data with 10 billion to 20 billion rows, Power BI as a tool also has its own limitation. So it will not be able to load all the 10 or to 20 billion rows that you are actually planning to use it. So there is a limitation for that. So you need to choose the correct storage mode, which can help you in loading the data also, and it can also help you in I would say giving the good performance to the end user. So that is also an important aspect that you have to keep in mind. So there are a lot of considerations, lot of factors that you have to include while choosing the mode. Okay, so as you know, I think people who are working in Power BI, they are already aware about the import mode, the direct query mode, right? How many of you have heard about this mode, direct leg and the composite model? Anyone knows about direct click and composite model?
No.
Okay. So basically, import mode, as you know, import mode is the Power BI's in-memory mode. So in this case, the data will be actually loaded into your, I would say, memory, and it is directly available for you to view and for you to analyze. This pretty much utilizes the complete features or the full features of Power BI. Direct query, on the other hand, is used when the data model size is very large. So in this case, if the data model size is very large and you want to kind of use it, okay, then in that case, loading that much amount of data is not possible. So in that case, what we can do is we can load the data in the form of direct query. So anything that you will build on this direct query semantic model, it will be eventually converted into the native SQL. So it depends on the source that you are using. So if you use SQL Server, it will be converted to native SQL Server SQL, or if you use Snowflake or Databricks, it will be converted into the respective Snowflake SQL or the Databricks SQL according to that. A direct link is a new option which was introduced along with your Fabric. So in Fabric, you have a warehouse called as Fabric Warehouse, and you have a lake house called as Fabric Lake House. So if I am trying to build my model from Fabric Warehouse or Fabric Lake House, then direct lake is the option which is kind of suggested. Okay, so this is specifically built for native Fabric options where you can directly load the data directly from the lake and you can kind of use it. This is more or less has to do with the Fabric capabilities. Okay, and a composite model is the model where you are kind of leveraging both the direct query as well as the import mode. So some tables you have it in direct query, some tables you have it in import mode. That is what we usually call it as composite model. Okay, so that is how these models kind of exist. So when you are building or when you are trying to create any I would say uh, report or any semantic model, this is an important consideration, because if this goes wrong, it could happen that your reports in production are slow, your reports are not responsive to slicers, your reports are not responsive to the design. So that is the thing that we have to take when we kind of consider it. Okay, so let me show you a demo of it. So let's say I have to connect to a SQL server and kind of build a report on top of it. So usually the SQL server or any type of database that you use supports both import and direct query. So in order to do import or direct query, what we have to do is we have to click on get data, then select the respective server. So in this case, I can select SQL Server because I have SQL Server for the demo. And then I can provide my server name and the connectivity mode that I want to use. Okay, so let it load. Meanwhile, anyone has any questions? Anyone? Okay, so we'll continue here. So this UI has changed slightly now. Earlier this UI was slightly different. So here you have to provide the server name, the database name that you know of, and then you can kind of select the storage. By default it is showing as import, but we can select as direct query also. So I'll show you the demo for the direct query. I'll just put my database or server name, and then based on your credentials you can select your credentials. So usually in organizations we use service principals, so you can use organization account, or you can use basic for authenticating using the service principal. For now I'm just using Windows credentials. Okay, so once I select this, it will show me the list of databases and all the tables that are available to me, so I can select them. So I'll go to this Northwind and I'll just select couple of tables for the demo. So I'll select orders and then I'll select customers and employees, and then I click on load button. So since this is in direct query, so it will not take much time. So yeah, in case of direct query, every time we kind of uh, create any visualization or we try to do any filtering behavior, it will create a SQL query in the backend, and that SQL query will kind of bring the results for us. Okay, so of course there is a drawback in using the direct query because it heavily relies on the backend source system that you are using for your data. So if for example I am using a Snowflake or a Databricks and my compute size is small, then I will observe slowness in my I would say performances also. So my report will automatically start working slow because everything is coming from the source and the source compute size itself is slow. So this is how the direct query looks like. So if you see here, this is my direct query. Okay, so okay, so usually this is how the direct query looks like. Okay, so you can see the storage mode directly here. Okay, if you want to convert your direct query model to an import mode, so there is a button at the bottom. I can simply click here and I can convert my model to import. Okay, so once I click on this, all the data will be loaded and I can convert my direct query model to import. In the initial phases it was like that import was an irreversible operation, which sets here that if you kind of change it to import, it will become an irreversible operation. But nowadays using the TMDL script you can change from import to direct query also. Okay, but yeah, once I click on this, then this becomes my import table. Okay, so if I click here, let it load. So now you were not able to see the data tab on the left hand side because this was the direct query mode, and in the direct query mode the data resides on the uh, I would say the database side. It is not stored, only the metadata is loaded. But in this case, since we are loading the data, we can now see the data tab, and inside the data tab I can see my data. So this is my data, which was kind of not visible. So now every question or anything that you try to do will be answered from the Power BI's in memory only. It will not go to any SQL. Okay, so that is my import mode. Apologies for that. Yeah, so that is my import mode. And the third mode which I discussed was the composite model. So composite model is the model where some tables are in import mode and some tables are in direct query mode. So let's say I have a table called as order details, and that table is having very high number of rows and high number of columns. Now loading that table is not possible for me, but I still want to use it. So in that case, I can go for I would say the direct query mode. So these tables will stay in import mode, and I will load one more table which is in direct query mode. Okay. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to stop me in between. Okay. So I'll select this. I'll go to next. And now I'll load that order details table in the direct query. So this is my table. Okay, so now if you go to your data model, you can see these are your tables which are loaded in the import mode, whereas this table, it is kind of loaded in the direct query. So that is how a composite model will look like. uh, in composite model, usually the fact tables with very high number of rows, they are in direct query because we can't load them. And dimensions, usually they are in the dual mode, import mode or dual mode. Okay. And in composite models, we heavily make use of the aggregation. So that is how we can kind of create a composite model. Okay, so there is a different article on top of it called as composite models in Microsoft, learn.microsoft.com. So go through it. You will get a very good idea about how the composite model works. So that is all on the composite model. Now coming to the next case, which is the direct lake. So basically direct lake semantic models are not created on the desktop. They are first created in the service, and nowadays we can kind of connect to a direct lake semantic model in desktop and edit it. Okay, so as I said, they are completely native fabric solutions. So if you have a fabric lakehouse and warehouse, then you can go to that lakehouse and warehouse, and then using that we can create it. So for this demo purpose, I created this sample lakehouse. So I can go to this sample lakehouse, and within this lakehouse I have an SQL endpoint also. So I am connecting to my SQL warehouse, and then if I want to create a semantic model from this warehouse or lakehouse, I can click on this new semantic model. So once I click on this new semantic model, you can see it will create a semantic model which will stay on the service. Okay, but in this service I can connect it to it using 2 points. One is direct lake on one lake. Okay, this is that option. Okay, and this is the second option, which is direct lake on SQL. Okay, so in this case, what can happen is if I want to load the data from the direct lake using the one lake Parquet format, then I can kind of use it. But if you have, let's say, some lakehouse or warehouse tables, and you have some created some views, okay, some functions on top of it, and then you want to use it, then you can use this option. Okay, so I can either use this option, and I can either use this option, and then I can create it. Of course, there is a trade-off between both of the features. Okay, how direct lake on one lake works is sometimes slightly different from how direct lake on SQL works. Okay, in certain cases, direct lake on SQL supports only new measure creation, whereas the direct lake on one lake will now support new column and new table creation also. So in this case, the entire semantic model stays on your fabric only. There is no download, there is no data that is coming in into your machine. Okay, so I can select something like this. So let's say I select this, and I select direct lake on SQL, and I create a model which is this. So in this case, guys, there is no report created as such, only one semantic model will be created. Okay, so if I click on confirm, this will create a model here, and that model I will be able to see it inside my dev workspace. Okay, and once that model is created, I can connect to that model here and I can edit it. But when you edit a direct lake semantic model in Power BI desktop, you will not see the report view, you will not see the table view. The only view that you will see is model view and the DAX view. Okay, so let me show you that also. Meanwhile, anyone has any questions? Okay, so let me connect to that. So the semantic model that I have created, so if I search it here, you can see user data SQL. So there is only semantic model which is created. So this direct link models, you can directly edit them on the service itself. Okay, so it is still under development. There are a lot of things coming in here. Okay, so some things are in preview, and eventually we will see some development happening for these type of semantic models. So if you see here, this is my semantic model created on direct lake. As you can see, I can have this table. Okay, and within that table you can see I have what, I don't have the relationship because there is only one table here. I can create a report on top of it. Okay, and if you see here, in this case, if I edit it, I change this to editing. Yeah, so you can see I can create new measures here. I can create DAX expressions to create the table, but I cannot create new column. Okay, that is what this SQL view does. Initially, as of now, this is kind of not supported here. Okay, but yeah, if you want, you can implement RLS OLS. So you can click here, manage roles, and it will open the same window which we see it in Power BI desktop, and we can kind of edit it. Okay, so that is how this SQL view works, and the same thing I can do it here also. Okay, so if I close it here, and let's say I want to edit the same model, the user data semantic model, the direct lake semantic model, so I can go to one lake catalog. I can click on this. Now usually what happens is you select the semantic model from here and you click on connect. So now we don't have to click on connect since we want to edit that model. So we have to click on the three dots and we have to edit the model. Okay, so this is my user data SQL model. So I can, once I click on it, it will directly connect to my model, but that is not what I want. I want to edit it. So to edit it, I can click on this. So instead of connect, select edit. Now you see 1 2 3 4 5 tabs here, but once we are connected, you see only 3. So this is my model, which is the direct lake SQL model, which is connected and which is created on SQL. So the options that you were able to see there, you will be able to see it here also. So you can see I can create a new measure here. I can create a new table from here using DAX. There is no transform data here. Okay, but I cannot create a new column on this table. Okay, so that is how this direct lake on SQL works. Direct lake on one lake will also work in the similar fashion, but it will have certain options enabled and it will have certain options disabled. So when you are studying for DP600, you can go through this decision guide. So this is the link for direct lake. There is a decision guide in the bottom which will tell you the differences between these. Okay, so sometimes the certification exam have these questions. So when you're preparing for the direct lake or when you're preparing for the storage mode, go through this table once, because this gets updated based on the features. So if you see here, the calculated tables and the calculated columns are in preview stage for this option, direct lake on one lake, but on direct lake on SQL endpoints, that is no for now, right? So some of those options are no, some of those options are yes. How this works, what is supported, what is not supported, all of these things will come from here. Okay, so have a look at it, and for your certification, go through this table, understand this table well, understand the differences between these tables. Okay, so that is how the import mode, direct query mode, composite mode, and the direct lake on SQL on one lake will work. Okay, so any questions now? Now moving on to the next part, so creating the DAX calculations. I think everyone who is working in the Power BI is aware about the DAX calculations that we can create. So we can create measures, we can create columns, and we can create tables. Usually if you create any calculated column or if you create any tables, obviously it is going to take storage, and during the refresh time they will be computed and then they will be loaded. Okay, so it is kind of recommended that if you want to create columns or tables, you should ideally try to create them in Power Query. Nowadays there are a lot of options. You can take help of lot of GPTs to create the code. So Power Query usually uses the M query, and loading the data or calculating new columns there is usually faster, so you can go for that. Okay, next thing is measures. So in measures we have the implicit measure and the explicit measure. So when you drop any column, when you drag and drop any column from the visualization, any numerical column, it tries to perform the automatic sum of it, the average of it, minimum of it, and maximum of it. So those are basically called as the auto aggregations. So when you are building the enterprise level semantic models, usually the auto aggregations are disabled. So there is a setting in your model which you can turn on to kind of disable the implicit measures, and then you can create your own measures using DAX so that everything is governed by you, everything is under your control. So that is the difference between the implicit and the explicit measures. And when you talk about the iterator functions, so we have the iterators functions in the form of x. So we have sum x, average x, max x. So whenever there are calculations involving row context, go through and create these x calculations. But if your calculations are more towards the filter context, go for the calculate functions. Okay, so this is just an example that I have taken how an iterator functions work. So you can see here, this is the left one is an explicit measure which we have created, where we are directly specifying calculate, which column we want to add, and then we are kind of specifying remove filter function, which will kind of remove the filter from that specific column. Okay, on the right hand side we are showing the iterator pattern. So this is a sumx function. So in this sumx function we have taken the table sales, then we are trying to multiply quantity by price, and then we are trying to subtract the cost from it. So this is a calculation which will happen on a row by row basis. So it will go to sales table. For every row it will multiply quantity by sales as quantity by price. Once it has multiplied it, then it will subtract the cost from it, and that is how it will calculate the values. Once all the values are calculated, then row by row it will add all the values to give you the final answer. Okay, so that is how the x calculations will work. So as part of the enterprise semantic model, try to create explicit measures over implicit measures, because then a business user, sometimes they get confused like why we are creating measures if we already have the column. So when they want to see the summarized entity, you can force them to use measures, but when they want to see the detailed values, they can go for the columns. That is how we differentiate between the columns and the measures. That is how we do it. Next is obviously iterators are powerful. There are certain specific use cases of iterators when there are row by row calculations, something like what I have shown it in the presentation. Then you can go for this type of calculations. Otherwise, try to go to filter context. Always try to solve your problems using the DAX functions like calculate, total YTD, MTD, QTDs, like that. Okay. So next thing, as I said, calculated columns and calculated tables. See if you can create them in the Power Query layer. Okay, so for direct click we don't have that option for now, but for the import mode we have that option. We can always go to we can always go to Power Query, and we can create those calculated columns and calculated tables according to that. Okay, so go through that and try to create the calculations according to that. Okay, the next section is on the optimizing of semantic model performance. So As I said, if the semantic model is not built properly, there would be lot of performance issues that you will face. Sometimes what happens is your entire report is working fast except one visual, and your client is complaining that whenever I am trying to use it, the visual is working slow. So in that case, something is not correct with your semantic model, so you need to kind of take care of it. Okay, so sometimes what happens is your Power BI does encourage the audience and the users to create a star schema model. That is what is recommended, but not all the time creating a star schema model is kind of possible. Sometimes we have multiple fact tables, sometimes we have multiple dimensions which are interconnected to each other. So in that case, it does affect the performance of your semantic model also. So to optimize this semantic model, what are the different options that we have? So one of the options that we have is the performance analyzer. So performance analyzer is the built-in tool within our Power BI. So we can kind of capture the DAX query from here, and then we can maybe try to explore it in the DAX Studio. Then we have optimized DAX. So in the optimized DAX, this is more or less has to do with what type of DAX functions are you using. Sometimes changing the DAX function, sometimes changing the order of the DAX functions also kind of helps in improving the overall performance. Next thing is high cardinality. So if you have a column with a very high cardinality, so let's say I'm using serial number column for some calculation, and I have to close to 10 to 20 million records in my fact table. So in that case, obviously computing something on such high cardinality column will take lot of time. So if I can do the calculation, or if I can shift my calculation to a low cardinality column, that can help me. Okay, next is implementing aggregation. So sometimes you have detail level data as your fact table, and whenever you are trying to kind of calculate something, let's say I want to do sum of it, let's say I want to do average of it, it is taking a lot of time. So in that case, the recommendation that usually goes is create an aggregate table similar to your detail table, and then use that aggregate table for your calculation purpose. So in that case, we see some improvement in the overall performance, and that overall performance improvement leads to your overall semantic model performance and the report performance also. So these are some of the aspects that are there when it comes to the optimizing semantic model performance. So I'll just show you how the performance analyzer works and how we can kind of use it. Okay, so let me open another report. Meanwhile, anyone has any questions? Okay. Okay, so let me connect to the SQL server, and this time I'll connect to that table in the direct query. So usually direct query, in case of direct query, there are certain SQL commands which are kind of executed. So it will be a good use case for our performance analyzer. Let me select direct query. So since this is in direct query, so I'm loading all the tables. So direct query will not take much time because we are not loading any data. We are just loading the metadata, the tables and the column descriptions. Okay. So as you can see, this is a direct query model. There is no data tab here. All the tables are connected. You can see here. This is how my model looks like. Okay. So let's say I create a visualization here. So in this, I take the order ID, the product ID, the quantity, and the unit price. Now let's say I want to see it with respect to my product name and my category. So this is the visual that has been loaded. Now coming to the performance aspect of it, let's say we do want to see this table and we want to optimize the performance of let's say this visual. Let's say this visual is loading very slow. So how do you debug it? So that's also one of the questions that gets asked a lot. So in order to debug it, what we will do is we'll go to optimize, and from here I will click on this performance analyzer. So in this performance analyzer, I can record my interactions and see which interaction is leading to the slowness. So for example, in this case, I can simply click here and it has started recording, and then in here I can, if I want, I can refresh the visual. So once I refresh the visual here, it will show me the amount of time that it has taken to load this visual. So it has taken 175. So the duration that is mentioned here is in milliseconds. So this is 175 milliseconds. So 175 milliseconds is what it takes to load this table visualization. If you want to see the breakup of it, you can see the breakup of it here. Not all the time the data or the addition of it will match. Sometimes there are parallel executions, so this will not match. But if you see here, there are different sections mentioned here. One is the DAX query, second is the direct query, and the third is visual display, and then there is other. So this DAX query and direct query, basically these are the DAX calculations which are kind of taking place to create or get the data for this. Visual display is responsible for displaying this visual. So usually this time is very low. And the other time basically is the interaction time. So if I have multiple visualizations on this page, then in that case it can take some time to load. So sometimes other time is responsible because of the slicer or because of the drill through, because of the drill down, all of those features. So sometimes this time can be a slightly higher. So this visual display is not in our hand, other time is in your hand. Okay, so you can disable the interactions and you can reduce it further if you have multiple visualizations. And this DAX query and direct query is basically how you write your how you write your DAX code. Okay, so from here I can copy this query and then I can run it, and then there is second option called as run in DAX query view. So if I click on this run in DAX query view, it will copy my query here, and then from here I can run it. So what this does is, this is the recent I would say change or recent tab introduced in Power BI desktop, which allows you to see the result directly within your Power BI desktop, but it does not give you much of the details. But if I want to go into the detail, what I can do is I can copy this query, I can go to my external tools, and in external tools I have this DAX Studio. So this DAX Studio can give me breakup of this complete I would say calculation, like how exactly this calculation is executed. Okay, so I can copy the query here. So this is how I copy my query, and if I want to run it, I can simply click on this run button. It will run it and it will give me the result. So here as of now it is showing me that this is how much time it took to actually run my calculation. So basically it is bringing the data from cache because I executed it once. So if I want, I can clear the cache from here and I can run it again, and then it can show me the actual time it took to execute it. So it took close to 115 milliseconds. So when I said performance, so for performance we have two tabs here. One is server timing, the other is query plan. So server timing will basically give you the split up of how the query is executed. So if I turn this on, okay, once this is on, I will clear the cache and I will run it again. So this is the time it took to kind of execute this. But when you go to server timings tab now, you will see the breakup of it. So this was a simple query, so that's why there are two steps. If you create an organization wise report, or if you create a complex semantic model, there can be 100 steps also here. So if you see here, this is my server timing. There are two components to Power BI. One is SE, which is storage engine. Second is FE, which is formula engine. How much time it took in formula engine versus how much time it took in storage engine, it will show. Server timing will also show you the steps. So if you see here, this was the query which was actually sent from your Power BI to your SQL server. So this is the SQL which is responsible for your execution. So let's say if your query is taking a lot of time, then you can try to optimize this. How you can simplify this? By simplifying your data model in the direct query. You can see if you can bring some columns directly. If you can write this query directly in your Power Query, you can go for that. So using those options, you can kind of reduce what are the type of calculations that are happening. Okay, and that way the overall DAX performance can improve. So the same step applies for your measures also. Let's say if your measure is working very slow in certain cases, so you can put your measure code here, run it, and check using server timing which step is taking more time. Okay, so if certain step is taking more time, you can try to write it in a different way so that your performance improves. So that is how overall you can improve the performance using the DAX Studio and the performance analyzer. That is how actually we use DAX Studio and performance analyzer. Okay, yeah. So that was it from the demo side. Now moving on to the next part, which is the semantic model security. So of course, at the enterprise level, security is important. So in organizations, sometimes there are 1 to 2 semantic models which are kind of powering 100 to 150 reports. And since they are powering multiple reports and multiple reports have multiple use cases, we don't want to expose the data. So in that case, we can implement the security. So in Power BI, there are two types of security which is supported. One is called as the row level security. Second is called as the object level security. In case of row level security, you can hide certain specific rows by specifying certain specific conditions. There are two parts of this security. One is called a static row level security, where you specify a specific hard coded value. So let's say I have region wise data. Let's say I have APAC, I have US or America, and then I have EMEA. So let's say I want APAC people to see only APAC data, EMEA people to see EMEA data, and America people to see America data. Then in that case, I can apply the row level security as per that static. Sometimes in organization, there are requirements where they want to restrict the data based on AD groups or email IDs. So if you want to restrict your data based on AD groups or email ID, then we go for dynamic row level security. So dynamic row level security is usually implemented by user principal name. Okay, there are a couple of new functions added in the Power BI DAX which can also help us in implementing the user dynamic RLS for the I would say columns. Okay, currently this row level security kind of helps us in restricting the data based on user principal name, but there are certain new functions which helps us in restricting data in more complex ways. Okay, so there can be a separate session for that, but yeah, do explore the dynamic RLS. One of the common concept of dynamic RLS which you might have heard is the organization hierarchical RLS. So in organization hierarchical RLS, what happens is if an employee logs in, the employee should be able to see only his data. But on the other hand, if a manager logs in or a supervisor logs in, he should be able to see the data of him plus all the subordinates under him. So that is implemented using this dynamic RLS only. That concept is called as hierarchical RLS. So you can go through that. There are a lot of tutorials on that. Object level security is a different concept. So in organizations, in certain organizations, we have a requirement where we want to share the semantic model. Okay, so if I have, let's say, an SAP model where I have data for sales, profit, margins, and I have data for supply chain also, and supply chain team wants to build dashboard and finance team also wants to build dashboard. Now the requirement is when finance team tries to build the dashboard, they should also only see finance specific tables and columns, and when supply chain team tries to kind of build the report, they should only see their supply chain based tables. So this thing is implemented using the object level security. So object level security is usually supported through tabular editor. It is not supported through Power BI desktop, and once it is implemented, people will be able to see the data with respect to their specific rules. Okay, so that is how usually the security is implemented. Once the security is implemented, you can test the security in Power BI desktop as well as you can test the security in service. You should also check the security with respect to email IDs, whether the persons are a specific person is able to see the data properly or not. So a row level security is usually implemented from Power BI desktop only. So you can go to this let me stop this. So you can go to modeling tab and manage roles, and from here you can create the role and you can specify the condition, whatever condition that you want to specify. So this is a new UI where you can simply select the column from the list, equals, not equals. You can select the condition, you can specify it. People who are interested in writing DAX, this is the older view where you can click on switch to DAX editor and you can write your condition by yourself. Okay, so that is how we usually do the row level security. As I said, column level security is not supported in the desktop. So if I want to implement a column level security, so what I have to do is I have to go to external tools. I have to go to this tabular editor. Okay, so this tabular editor in the backend is connected to my semantic model in my Power BI desktop file only. So here I can create tables, I can create roles, I can create relationships, I can create variables too. So from here we can create the role and then we can add the security to it. Okay, so if I want to hide anything, I have to set the permissions according to that. Okay, so let me show you an example. Okay, so let me mention this as OLS, then save it. So this role is created here, nothing else. And now I go to external tools, tabular editor, and then in here I have my role. So I can select my role, and for object level security you have a section here called as table permissions. So when it says default, it means that the table will be visible to the user, but if you want to hide a specific table, what you have to do is you have to change this value from the default to none. So once you change the value to default to none, then the person will not be able to see that specific table when he tries to create a report out of it. Okay, for viewer there is no change because viewer does not have access to the semantic model, he has access to the report only. Okay, so that is how that object level security works. And when it comes to testing the security, so you can simply check the security in Power BI service. So a lot of people don't know this, but if you have created a semantic model and let's say if you want to test whether the security is working fine or the whether the user is able to see it or not, you can directly pass the email ID and you can test it also. So I can click something like this, security, and then here I can pass the ID and I can check it. Okay, so for example, let's say I want to check for this person. So I can click on this test as role. Okay, and in the test as role, I can go to viewing as, I can select that specific person here, something like this, and then I can see whether that person is able to see the report or not. If there is some error here, that means something is wrong. If there is no error and you are seeing the correct data, then that is fine. So that is how you can impersonate a user and check whether he is able to see the data properly or not. Okay, so that is how we usually test the rules. That is how we usually validate the rules in Power BI service. Okay, any questions here? Okay. And the last part, how do we manage the semantic model? So usually we create lot of reusable assets. So when you work for enterprise level models, sometimes the business user is very new to Power BI. So we end up creating lot of reusable assets for them. Sometimes we create templates for them in the form of PBIX or PBIT files so that they can fill the data and they can simply create their reports very easy for certain users. So we create mock-up wireframes, we create certain screens, and then we kind of train them so that they can use it. GitHub version control. So currently Microsoft Fabric supports GitHub and Azure DevOps. So you can kind of create your repository on Microsoft Azure DevOps or GitHub, and then you can manage the code from there. So usually people don't manage the production workspace using version control, they manage the dev workspace and they push the code from dev to QA and from QA to production using the deployment pipeline. So deployment pipeline is an important concept that you should know. So deployment pipeline option is available at the workspace level if you have the right set of access. So if I have the right set of access, I can go to my workspace. I will see an option like view deployment pipeline. So if I create something and if I want to move from one workspace to the other workspace, I can simply move it. So for example, let's say I want to move something to test. So I select test first and then here I will have some checkboxes. So let's say I want to move this model. So I can click on this checkbox and I can click on deploy. So from development, this thing will be deployed to my test workspace. Okay, so for now there is some error, but yeah, that is how usually the deployment pipeline works. So when you are deploying from the development to test or production, always use deployment pipelines. For development purpose, there is an option nowadays that you can maintain your files inside the Git, so that will help you to work with multiple teams. So with the help of this Git, what can happen is you can store your Power BI file as a PBIP or PBIR extension, and you, because of that, what can happen is two people can work on the same PBIP or PBIR file also. Okay, provided they are working on two different pages. So that is also possible because of this Git version control. XML endpoint, so Tabular Editor, DAX Studio, Senpai notebooks, they all work with XML endpoint. So XMLA stands for XML for analysis. So this allows you to access your semantic model programmatically. So I can create measures, I can create tables, I can change Power Query without even opening my Power BI desktop. Okay, so I can directly make change in the semantic model in Power BI service also. I can configure incremental refresh also using these XML endpoints. So this opens the programmatic door for you. So using that you can directly edit the file and kind of connect to your semantic model programmatically. Okay, and then of course to manage it you can monitor it. So there is a Fabric hub where you can kind of monitoring hub where you can see the refresh failures, the activities that you're doing. So if you go to your Power BI service account, okay, so let me close this. So you can see there is a monitor tab here under the three dots. So if I click on this, it will show me what are the different activities that are happening within my workspace. So based on your access, it will show you what are the things that you have created, whether your refresh has succeeded, whether your refresh has failed. You can filter here by these activities. So sometimes this question is asked in DP 600, DP 700. So remember the statuses that you can see here for filtering. Remember the column options that you can see here for filtering, how you can filter it. Okay, so this failure thing is coming, it is still under preview, but yeah, this is also one of the section where typical certification questions are asked. The monitor hub. What monitor hub can show? What are the different item types that are covered in monitor hub? That is also one of the questions. What is the submit? What are the different filters that are available? How many workspaces you can see? All of that options. Okay. So just remember the statuses and the options. Okay. Yes. So what to implement this week? So this is a summarization of what we have learned. So you can try to force star schema, but yeah, I know usually it doesn't happen. Avoid many to many. If possible, try to create a bridge table and resolve it. Okay. Many to many might work in case of import mode, but if you switch to composite and direct query, this could create issues. So avoid having many to many. Try to have a good proper structure in the model, because that would simplify your DAX patterns also. Okay. Remove implicit measures and try to have explicit measures, so that will kind of bring clarity to your semantic model. Check performance analyzer. So the way I tried it, try to do it, and if you have any questions, do reach out to me, I can help you out. Okay. Try to see dynamic RLS, how dynamic RLS works, because nowadays everyone works on AD groups and the email IDs. So see how we can restrict it. Okay. And then of course explore the Git version. So for Git version, I'm planning to have a separate session, like how Git works, how we can connect to GitHub, and how we can work with our workspace. So that is something that I'm planning, that is still in the pipeline. Okay. And this module is similar to the module that was mentioned in the Microsoft Learning Path, Design Manage Semantic Model. So this is part of your I would say semantic model, sorry, DP600 certification. So I just try to cover the key takeaways. I was just trying to explain you the points and give you a short demo on what are the different things. Okay. So if you have any questions, you can go through this learning path. This is our community meetup link, which is already available on the community page also. And these are my LinkedIn and the email handle. So if you have anything, do let me know. We are trying to plan some real-time intelligence sessions also. The topic could change in future also. Okay, it depends based on the trainer's availability. We'll see if someone is available to take that real-time intelligence. We'll take that. Otherwise, I'll cover the next DP600 topic. Okay. Yeah. Now we are open to questions. Anyone has any question?
Mm.
Okay, so if there are no questions, then we can close this session. Thank you so much for joining. We'll continue the DP600 in the next week also. So I'll try to cover a different module under DP600. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for joining.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, Surendra, you have any question? Yes, Surendra, if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask.
He, I wanted to know actually how can you get the access of MS Fabric?
Sorry, how can you get access to?
MS Fabric, because I was logging through my Gmail ID and it
Yeah,
was feeding me an
usually
error.
the email IDs, the corporate email IDs are the ones that are supported for Fabric. So if you want to use Power BI or Fabric, you need to have your organization email ID or any other domain. So using that domain, you can request for a trial capacity and then you can explore it.
Okay. And Gmail, Yahoo, these don't
Gmail,
work.
Yahoo, not support. Yeah, not supported. Outlook, others are not supported.
Okay. And is there anyone who got the voucher that has been like for
I
the
heard
data?
couple of folks got it. So you have to finish two reactor trainings, two reactor sessions, and two learning modules to get it. So I heard that post that they check in the backend and then they are kind of giving the vouchers in 2 to 3 weeks span.
Okay. I actually did that, but I haven't received yet. So whom I have to connect with?
I think Microsoft team will help you out. So just check if you have met their criteria. If you haven't met, maybe it can happen. Or other thing is 2 to 3 weeks timeline is what they have said. So within two to
Okay.
three weeks, they would kind of give the voucher.
Okay. And did you create any series like where we can get all kind of questions or all kind of hands-on expertise with to clear the DP 600?
So that is in plan. Okay. So my first session will be out post this thing. So mostly by Wednesday, Thursday, this recording will also be on the YouTube. And for each of the modules that I'm mentioning, there will be certain video series that is created on the YouTube. So I've recently created my channel. The channel name is Dashwise. So Dashwise BI. So eventually that channel will have all the DP600 and DP700 playlists.
That's why that is on YouTube.
Yeah, that will be on YouTube. But Wednesday, okay, wait till Wednesday. I'm just curating sessions and mostly I'll be uploading them. Okay.
Sure. Thank you.
Yes. Okay then. Thank you. Thanks everyone. Bye.